and the same rules apply here, and the same full value treatment of each other, respect and no bullying and no bias and these things. So once I have that, I had 2 kids the first year, 2 young boys that were just super, super builders. And they became very competitive with each other because they both had that reputation. And interestingly enough, these were not mainstream popular kids. These were, I guess you would have even maybe classified them a little socially awkward. But they had found their niche. And they were just incredibly excelling with the skills in building and scripting. But because they became so competitive, they became very territorial, and they started mischief, more mischief than, started like building blocks in front of the other one's door and these kind of things. And
because students can build wherever they want, I suppose.
well, we have areas, they're called work and play areas, where they can build. And then there are sandboxes that have auto return on.
What's auto return?
Auto return means 48 hours, everything that's on it gets returned to the owner. So they have to learn how to link and save to their inventory and things like that.
Right.
So what happened was they were in world and they had an argument, and they used some foul language. And interestingly enough, it came to my attention because another student was there and got very uncomfortable and didn't know, because they had participated in the chat, didn't know if they would be held liable. So they sent me an email and said, we had a problem last night and I'm really uncomfortable about it. And I went in and looked at the chat and called the kids down and said, here's what you said. You realize you broke the rules. You're out for the rest of the year. That year was done. Nobody else did anything.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. It killed me because these were 2 really kids that had really found their place.
And then there was another incident.
And then the same thing, very similar, happened the next year, but it had nothing to do with building. It was again 2 boys that just were kind of aggressive with each other, and I think one had his little following and the other had his little following. It was actually, it'd be interesting to research that, because it was actually very similar to what goes on in the cliques and the social mores of the middle school population.
Now, you got up to point 2 of 3 ways in which it's good for education to have the 3 individual worlds. What was number 3? Number 2 was psychosocial.
The other thing is we can now look at participation in events that we could not do in the real world in terms of the capacity of the virtual environment. I'll give you a simple example. A math teacher came to me and she said, you know what I really need to do with these kids? I really need to give them each $100, take a bus to the mall with them, have them shop, have them go to a restaurant, and have them figure out the tip and the percentage and discounts on it. And I said, okay, let's go. So we did. We set up we called it flea market math. We set up a list of, a shopping list. We gave each avatar 100 lindens. And the prize was you had to budget your money to buy the 10 items on the list. And the prize was you had to reserve $6, 6 lindens, for your ticket to the beach party. And the things you had to buy on the list were all items you needed for the beach party, like a surfboard and a blanket and a towel and an umbrella and suntan lotion and a water bottle and these things. But we put them all out in a shop. And we put out 6 surfboards, all different prices. And the way we priced them was 14 lindens, 22% off. So they had to calculate the price, and they had to then figure out if they were working within their budget, because they actually had 94 lindens to spend. So some kids would say, oh, but I want that surfboard, but if I buy that, I won't have enough money left to get a water bottle, and I have to have a water bottle because I need all 10 items. So they were doing all this calculating and figuring out what the real prices of things were, and buying them, and some of them stayed within their budget, some of them didn't. So we made them do they had to do some kind of silly extra project in order to, okay, we'll let you come to the party, but you have to do this. I forget what it was, but they were so motivated. Now that was just, in theory, you could do that in the real world if you were to hire a bus and somehow manage to get $100 for each kid, but the virtual world just made it so easy. But then there's things like climbing up into a NASA rocket. And there's things like looking at the day and night and trying to calculate. There's a physics engine in Second Life, so they're starting to calculate ramps and
virtual science experiments.
Exactly. Now they have to be scripted sometimes, but sometimes it's just if they put a ball in and they create a sphere that's a ball. and then they set that so it's responds to gravity, okay, and which is just a click. And then they place the ball on the ramp, so they're looking at trajectile, they're looking at inertia, they're looking at all these scientific concepts. Now, that could be done in the real world, but somehow in the virtual world they can document it. They can, the conversations that go on are just, and they're filming. The other thing is they're doing a lot of, now they've started doing machinima. So, here's a great thing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bouncing around now.
That's okay.
Liza Medina, who is one of the teachers you'll meet today, she's done a number of projects in Second Life. She's an English teacher. She's done discussion groups and Socratic seminars, but this summer she did, with a group in the summer program, she did a CSI investigation. That was really, really cool. Where was I going with that? What was I telling you about Liza? Machinima. She's the director of our school play.
Yes.
This year we're doing The Wizard of Oz. She's creating all the sets in Second Life.
Okay, right.
And she's going to project them onto a screen on the real life stage.
Great.
So the kids will have Oz as the background
Fantastic,
that's
good.
created in Second Life.
Okay.
It's just you need a rear projector, a rear screen projector.
Yes, sure.
So I mean, the ways that we're using it are just, every day somebody comes up with, could we? Yeah, that's my favorite. Do you think we could? When the body image teacher, when the health teacher came to me and said, do you think maybe Second Life would be good for an investigation of body image? I almost fell off my chair. And now the teachers, now that a lot of them have used it, now their creative juices are flowing. And now they're saying, hey, you know what, my kids are having a hard time with this concept, and I think if we brought them into Second Life and they did this.
Now, who actions it if they have an idea? Can many of the teachers script? Can many of the teachers build? And
Some of them can build. None of us can script. I'm not a scripter.
So so that all goes outsourced to Eloise?
If it's something really complicated, it would go to Eloise. If it weren't, it would go to one of the kids.
The kids, right?
Oh, the kids
So
can
you've got a
script like
team.
crazy.
And
But
so they're
first
actually
year,
designing
Stephen-
the activities.
First year, Stephen, I sat down next to a kid and looked and went, oh, cool, how'd you do that? And they'd say, oh, let me show you. And they'd open up the script and they'd say, and I changed this integer to this, and I just put in this message because I saw that script had that and this script didn't, so I put that. And so I said, okay, you're taking existing scripts and you're dissecting them and seeing what happens and figuring out how to script, what the scripting language is. There's also all sorts of resources online for scripts and tutorials. The second year, I would sit down in the same situation and say, oh, that's really cool, show me how you did that. And they would just look at me and go, you wouldn't get it, Mrs. Sheehy.
So
they've just given up.
So there's a real body of expertise amongst the students. One thing that occurred to me, have you ever had any concerns from parents with students programming till 3 a.m. because...
Remarkably, none.
Okay.
Now,
none.
this, I've had a couple of inquiries.
Yeah.
My child said something about being in Second Life. Is this a safe environment? A quick phone call or a quick email. I have a pre-form letter that I'd be happy to share with you that I anticipated having to send home to every parent because I anticipated a big fallout because especially when CSI Miami had a thing on Second Life in an episode.
Sure.
And, the main grid
media,
has adult content and unfortunately the adult content is what usually gets the press. But surprisingly little interest